Hey guys, I want to make a new video going over the new massive 0.3 patch in Path of Exile 2. I made this whole TLDR for you guys, going over pretty much everything in the patch, although it is quite large. This is definitely one of the biggest patches I've seen in Path of Exile in like the history I've been playing. It really is just that big with a lot of great improvements, and most importantly, it finally looks like the game is going in the right direction. I feel like 0.2 was definitely a step back. This patch definitely looks like a massive step forward. Yeah, so let's get into it. So what is the TLDR of the patch? Well, it is quite big, so it's not going to be a short video, but I'll try to go through as fast as I can. First things first, there's going to be a free player weekend on the launch of 0.3. So I think it lasts for like 3 days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and anyone can play Path of Exile for free. I think it's pretty nice. Campaign, so Act 4 is here. They're also going to introduce 3 new mini acts to replace Cool, so Cool is gone from the game. And these seem to be roughly 1/3 the size of a regular act, so it won't be that long. Presumably Act 4 and the 3 new mini acts is shorter than the old Cool 1 to 3, at least that's what they were saying. These will go away once Act 5 and Act 6 are released. They are just temporary, so we can have Cool removed from the game, which is definitely very, very good. Because doing Cruel Act 1 to 3 was not very fun. I don't think anyone really enjoyed it. In total, we are getting 35 new zones with 24 new bosses, which also means new endgame map layouts and new endgame bosses as well. That is pretty nice. Balanced, there's a ton of stuff here, but yeah, essentially all classes got buffed. Now I say all because currently in the patch notes, it does look like Warrior might have been nerfed, which is kind of surprising. But every other class seems to have gotten substantial buffs. So yeah, besides Warrior, every class seems to be stronger this patch than last. Some of the power creep is definitely going to be pretty insane this patch. While the patch notes aren't done, there does seem to be a lot of broken builds still in the game. Maybe they get hit in the patch notes and they're not completely done yet. But yeah, I'm really surprised they actually didn't nerf more because there's a lot of builds that can one-shot Zesh, and those builds are not nerfed in this patch, so they will continue to one-shot Zesh 4. So yeah, there's definitely gonna be a lot of broken builds this patch, at least as far as I can see right now. The patch notes might be updated though. And as you see, as I continue reading, there's gonna be a lot of power creep coming in this patch. Next is gems. Gems got a massive improvement. So you can now use multiple of the same support gem for different skills, like in Path of Exile 1. So for example, you can use martial tempo on every single skill. You're no longer tied to one martial tempo on your character, it's just tied per a skill slot. This is a massive improvement. You're no longer going to run out of gem slots. You know, generally when you're playing, it feels like you just don't have enough support gems to use for all your skills. Now that's no longer true. You can have martial tempo on Lion Arrow and martial tempo on Lion Rod. Overall, massive improvement to the gem system. There's also 12 new skill gems. Each class is getting a couple new skills, new support gems, and new drop only lineage support gems. So lineage support gems are very, very strong, extremely powerful from what they showed us, but they are drop only. Some of them can only be attained through specific bosses, like specific boss drops. Others are just world drops. And most, but not all, existing support gems now have 3 tiers. So the first tier is the same gem as right now. The second tier is stronger. Then the third tier might alter and change the support gem how it works. Overall, this is definitely a lot more power to people's character. It's definitely going to change how you build your character as well. Trade-in. So this is definitely one of the biggest things they have announced, considering a lot of people have been asking for this in Path of Exile 1 for over a decade. A synchronized trade-in is finally coming. You can finally trade with players while they're offline or while you're offline. The only downside is when you do this type of trade-in, it will cost gold, but it's a very, very low cost. Important. Once you list an item, you cannot delist it or change the price for a short time. So be careful not to misprice your items, because if you do, someone will just come in your hideout and instantly swoop it up. Yeah, do be careful about listing your items for the correct price. The old trading system is still staying, so you can still use it if you want. And there will be, reasons to use it, of course, because, if you don't want to misprice an item, you can just use the old trading system instead. This new trading system does require new stash tabs, but you can convert any of your existing stash tabs into the new ones if you want for no cost whatsoever. This new system will still use the dedicated trade website, but there's an option to instantly teleport to the player's hideout and buy his item in a stash, even if he's offline. So yeah, overall, this is just, really, really insane. A lot of people have been asking for this for a very long time. Trading in POE 2 especially has been a big annoyance for a lot of people. People are AFK, you message them, they raise the price. This will pretty much no longer happen. Of course, you can still use the old trader system, but I do believe most people will probably eventually just use the new one. And if you are wondering, they did say this will come to Path of Exile 1 eventually as well, probably in the next patch. Crafting. A lot of crafting improvements overall. The crafting seems to be a lot better this patch. First things first, essence are reworked. They now work like regal orbs. So this makes a magical into a rare item. There's 4 essence tiers, and they now specifically roll a certain range, similar to how essence work in Path of Exile 1, with the higher tier essence rolling a higher tier stat. A perfect essence, the 4th tier of essence, it's the highest tier, and this one, instead of working like a regal orb, it works like a chaos orb instead. And it can also roll new unique modifiers. So pretty strong stuff there. And almost every currency item now has 3 different tiers. For example, there's now 3 different tiers of exalted orbs. And essentially what it means is the higher the tier of the currency means the higher tier of affixes it will roll. So if you use the highest tier of an exalted orb, it'll like guarantee roll like tier 3 or better. So it'll just always roll a high tier modifier, giving you a much higher chance of making a item way more useful. There's now also exceptional items. These are new drop only gear. It's the existing gear. So for example, there's a Gemini bow. In the next patch, you can drop an exceptional Gemini bow. So what do these do? Essentially, these new exceptional gear can roll to 30% quality or have an additional socket. So you can have a 3-socket bow and you can corrupt it to get a 4-socket bow. So yeah, pretty powerful new drop only items. There's new Owens, of course, for new crafting, and Hanakora's locks, which are from Path of Exile 1, are added into the game with the exact same function. If you don't know what a Hanakora's lock is, it's a currency item you use on an existing item, and then you can hover over a currency item onto the Hanakora's lock item, and it'll tell you what will happen. So it's a very, very strong crafted mechanic that's in POE 1. It's also very, very, very expensive. Yeah, pretty insane for crafting. Sprinting, brand new mechanic. There's a dedicated sprint button. I believe it gives you 50% increased movement speed. There is a massive downside, is that if you get hit once, a single time, just once, not a stun bar like a Roa, you will get heavy stunned. You get the full 3-second knockdown heavy stun if you get hit once while sprinting. It is quite a harsh downside. You activate sprinting while holding down your dodge roll button. So you dodge roll, and if you hold down the dodge roll, you will start sprinting. You can also cancel your sprint instantly by pressing any single skill to avoid that knockdown penalty. Class changes, there is quite a bit. I try to just go TLDR, just not to make the video too long. Weapon swapping is now instant. There is no time between weapon swapping, pretty huge. All CC from the players to the monsters last longer. So CCs that monsters apply to you last the same time as before, but CCs you apply to monsters last longer. So shock and chill are 8 seconds, and ignite is easier to apply. Deadeye got new cold skills for new cold archetypes, so maybe pure cold Deadeye is now pretty good. Poison massively buffed, and Mirage Archer from Path of Exile 1 is now in the game. Warrior totems got massively buffed and now scale your weapon. It should make them a lot better in endgame. Armor breaking skills are all buffed. New fire skills and war cries are also buffed. The mercenary reloading no longer slows you down, pretty nice. Also, shooting while attacking for both bows and crossbows has a less downside penalty, so you won't be slowed as much while shooting now, either with a bow or crossbow. That's pretty nice as well. New totem skill, which auto shoots grenades for you. So it works pretty much just like a totem. You place it down, you put a grenade, wherever grenade skill you want, and it'll keep shooting the grenade out. All banners are also buffed and it made it way less clunky to use, so you probably will actually start using banners, as banners do seem quite useful now. Monk, that Trilo Monk got a pretty massive rework / buff. Overall, it does seem a lot better than before. The unarmed playstyle is strongly supported now. There's even a new keystone to fully dedicate you to that unarmed playstyle. So if you want to play unarmed, it should be viable in this new patch. And the wind skills for the monk are all getting buffed. So all 3 elemental curses are now one called elemental weakness. So there's not like flammability or hypothermia. It's just one elemental weakness. That is pretty nice. It also helps, these multi-elemental builds like the Sork or the Ranger out pretty hard. Same for exposure. There's now only one exposure. So it's just elemental exposure, no like cold, fire, or lightning exposure. There's also a new infusion mechanic that's namely only for spells. So essentially the TLDR is that you can pick up these fire, lightning, or cold infusions to enhance specific spells. Infusions drop from casting other certain spells. So it's supposed to be some like combo gameplay, but the benefits do seem quite high for going for this infusion based gameplay. As for other classes, I believe like Blood Mage now got the first 2 points of the ascendancy for free. So Blood Mage essentially no longer has like -2 ascendancy points. You can now dedicate your 8 full ascendancies to the full tree, not just the downside. Tree and gear. So there's 150 new notables on the skill tree. So every single class is getting a ton of new notables in their area. This should make skill tree feel a lot better in PoE 2, as currently it does feel kind of mid. So I'm hoping this does make the skill tree feel a lot better. Also, all attribute requirements on all gear and skill gems is reduced by 20 to 25%. This is going to make it way easier to gear, way easier to use like different type of skills like an int skill and a dex skill now. Yeah, this is a massive change. Defense. So evasion got buffed. They added a new mechanic called deflect. You have a chance to take 40% reduced hit damage based off the enemy's chance to hit. So what this means is that if you have higher evasion chance, it means you have a higher chance to deflect. If you stack evasion, not only do you get that chance to avoid attacks, but you also get that chance to get damage reduction. And it is possible to reach 100% deflect chance for 40%, damage reduction. This does sound pretty strong, and it might make pure evasion builds and not just, evasion ES builds viable. Armor also got buffed, so you can now make armor work versus elemental damage and not just physical damage. Similar to deflect, this is going to be a new affix that can roll on gear, and you can also spec into it onto your tree. You can make more than 100% of your armor apply to elemental damage. I don't know how strong this is going to be, because currently in PoE 2, armor applies first in the formula and then resist, which makes the armor not that effective versus elemental damage. We'll see how strong this is, if this is good enough for warriors, but it is armor buff nonetheless. Energy shield on the tree is nerfed, so they didn't really go into it and how much it is nerfed, but presumably all these small nodes, like these 15%, are going to be lower in the patch. They do realize ES is too strong, and they are going to lower the value of these nodes. Block and parry now works versus all hits, except the specific boss skills where they glow red before attacking. Yeah, whether it's like AoE or whatever, it works versus all hits, which should make block and parry a lot more reliable in this patch. I still don't think you're going to use it in endgame, as it is like, a little bit clunky and slow to use, but it probably will have a place in some specific builds. So finally, we're getting our first real lead mechanic, and this is called Abyss, which is from Path of Exile 1, although it is quite different in Path of Exile 2. This is the first real lead mechanic, which means it shows up in every single map for the whole league duration. This is how leagues work in PoE, and this is going to be the first real lead mechanic in Path of Exile 2. So how does this work? So Abyss cracks spawn throughout the map. Kill monsters near the Abyss spawns will spawn an Abyss horde that will come out and try to attack you. If you successfully kill an Abyss horde, you will get an Abyss chest, and this gives new loot, new Abyss certain items, new crafting slots, and a chance for bosses as well. And also, killing certain enemies or monsters near the Abyss cracks also enhances the loot. For example, killing the map boss near the Abyss crack will spawn a big Abyss boss. If you kill an essence or a rare monster, it will also enhance the Abyss, giving you better rewards in return. There's also a new crafting mechanic tied to this. Essentially, you put an Abyss affix onto your item, which then allows you to select 3 different affixes in return, probably giving you on average better crafting results than what an Exalted Orb would give you. But there's also some new unique affixes that are only from this new crafting mechanic. And of course, there's also Abyss bosses that spawn from the Abyss, which presumably also drop new specific Abyss uniques. Endgame changes. So there's new map layouts. There's going to be new bosses in each biome, each one requiring like a different activation to enter. For example, one of the bosses requires you to complete all the maps around it. So they're trying to make the Atlas more interesting. So, new bosses in each biome, and you gotta do different stuff to activate each boss. It should be interesting. More and more of these changes will make the Endless Atlas more fun to do if each biome is like, distinctly different from the rest. Right now, all biomes kind of feel the same. So this is their attempt to make the biomes feel a bit different, which is definitely a step in the right direction. Waystone rolling is also reworked. It works pretty much the same as PoE 1 now, where each mod contributes to the map quant, rarity, and pack size. So no longer where it's only prefix that gives you bonuses and suffixes give you negative. Every modifier does give you a negative, but they are not as strong as they were before. But now each modifier also gives you quant, rarity, and pack size. This is definitely a massive improvement. This is how it works in Path of Exile 1, and it's very good in that game, so I'm glad they brought it over to Path of Exile 2. The first 2 boss points for each lead mechanic is now easy to get, so they can be acquired in maps is what they were saying. So all the mechanics, you know, Abyss, Expedition, Ritual, and Delirium. They were saying with the Delirium, for example, the first 2 points, you just get it by like killing coasters in the map. So it should be way easier to fill out your tree now, and the first 2 are pretty much free as you don't need to kill a boss to get them. Also, all pinnacle bosses now just require splinters to enter instead of a single key, and the lower tier of the boss requires less splinters to enter. So for example, the first tier of the boss only requires 50 splinters, where the highest tier of the boss requires like 100 or 150, making it, you know, less punishing to enter those earlier tier bosses. Arbiter now just has 2 difficulties. Leveling is also sped up until level 95. After 95, it should be the same EXP as before. And as of course, there's going to be new endgames and chase uniques. Now that is all that is in this patch. There's probably also some more I missed. There was also massive patch notes with a ton of skill changes. Can't really go over all that in this video because it was a really big patch. Something to note is that they did mention in the Q&A high priority fixes for 0.4. So unfortunately, towers, the thing I hate the most, are not fixed in this patch, but it's one of the highest priorities for 0.4. They know people hate towers. They are going to fix it, and they are going to change them in 0.4. One idea that I was saying was just make towers for scouting and you move all the juices from them. This would be amazing. Also, classes like the Druid and more Senate seeds are coming in 0.4. They just couldn't quite make it in time for 0.3. Anyway, that is my whole patch TLDR. I do think overall this patch is extremely good and it's a step in the right direction. Very unfortunate towers were not touched on, but they are going to be touched on in 0.4 with more endgame improvements. So it does look like POE 2 is getting a lot better, a massive step up from 0.2 in my opinion. But yeah, that's about it.